Mm. Welcome to True North Insight, and my name is Jill Davey. And maybe for context, because who knows how long these recordings last in the cyber world, to give some context that this is October of 2021, and we are still in the deep dive lands of the COVID pandemic, amongst lots of other worldly conditions. And as we are in this stage of the fourth wave of the pandemic gaining momentum and that trying to be stopped, they're not stopped, but slowed down, minimized, would be wonderful if it could be stopped. There is more and more, it feels to me, and I hope that maybe you have a different experience of it, but it seems quite clearly more and more polarization, more and more separation based on views. And you may be experiencing this in your family, with your friends, in your community, in your workplace, in all the places, in the grocery store, in the shops, where we're more conflict is happening, more polarization, and sometimes more segregation, that people that have this view, we may get to the place where we're not communicating with them, that where we decide it's kind of too painful, not fruitful, unwise, unskillful to continue being in a close relationship with people whose worldviews are so diametrically opposed to what ours may be. And I'm trying hard to not speak about what those views are, because I think we all have an idea and different experiences, and it's not so much about where you're landing there that I want to talk about. So just to name whether or not you're against vaccinations, against wearing masks, against having to prove you're vaccinated, or for any of those aspects. So that I'm obviously not going to get into debating that, because it's only me talking anyway, so that wouldn't be a very interesting debate. But talking more tonight about the teachings, the Dharma teachings, about the attachment to views, and the Buddha, the teachings from the Buddha give a lot. There's a lot. It comes up very often. And so it's interesting. Things haven't changed much in 2,600 years. Oh, that's a grim thought. My goodness. That it's part of this human condition that we have these oppositions in viewpoints and in philosophies and in values and in all the ways that a view shows up in all of our opinions, etc. And so the teaching is more about what is a skillful relationship with views. Now, not all views are considered unskillful, because it's actually part of the Eightfold Path, or the middle path is wise view, or right view, or skillful view. The Pali word for view is ditti, D-I-T-T-H-I, and it's samaditthi is part of the middle or right view, is part of the way to the ending of suffering. So it can't be that the Buddha is saying that all views are bad, that we shouldn't have views. The difficulty is with attachment to views, clinging to views, and what is the result of that. It was hard to choose a sutta or suttas to refer to, suttas meaning the teachings as they're written down that we have as our resources for this path, as well as our practice, which comes from these written teachings. Because there's many here. But you might just take a moment to reflect on what it's actually a really interesting practice to take this like for a week or so. What views am I attached to lately? Like in a day, you may be surprised. How many are there? How many views are we actually clinging to as being right and true, and how everyone should think and be, or and it can be completely mundane, like canned beets should not be a thing. That's a view. And it can be really mundane things, like and the ways we, especially if you're co-living with people, oh boy, check out the views of like they should pack the dishwasher like this, obviously. This is the best way, and so really it can be super mundane things that we get quite attached to. And of course, it can be really larger, deeper values that we're attached to. And so it's an interesting practice to like keep a little notebook and do some reflection at the end of the day or through the day. What views am I attached to, and what is the outcome of the clinging there? And so as I was pointing to, there are some views that are considered skillful and wholesome and part of the path to awakening or to freedom from suffering. And we have also our commitment to our principles and ethics and values. That's a very, very important root of the path. And so the question is, what's the difference then between our ethical commitment to values and the path of wise view, of seeing things, knowing the true nature of things, which I'll come back to, and the harmful aspects that the Buddha teaches about the attachment to views. And so the key word there is attachment, clinging to views. That there is the rub. So both of these aspects have views. It's not saying that views are bad to have. It's, are they clung to? And there's a sutta, one that I didn't print to have on hand, but it's just coming to mind now, of I think it's called The Raft, and it's about using the raft of the Dharma, of the teachings of practice, the understanding of how things are, the deep knowing of how things are, not the mental understanding, is like a raft to cross to the other shore. Picturing a river. So we use the practice to cross to the other shore, meaning the shore of liberation. And then how it would be foolish to then pick up the raft and carry it for the rest of the way on your journey. The sutta points to leaving the raft once you've crossed to the other shore, that there's no need to continue clinging to teachings, to the practice, to anything. once that's happened. So how do we assess whether our views are helping us to live more skillfully, compassionately, with wisdom, with care, with non-harm, and without the attachment that causes the suffering? Yeah. So a couple little, just little references, and this is something that probably going to come back to looking at other aspects here. Which part do I want to say here? Okay. So what I was just saying there about how do we know what is skillful? And in this sutta, I'll just name it because some people like to read them, but you don't need to do that at all. If that's not your jam, don't worry about it. This is called the Kalama Sutta, Kalama. And it's in the the Angutta Nikaya 3.65. So that's if you like to read along. Don't worry about it if that's not your thing. In this, the Kalamas are kind of a village of people. That's the name of this kind of area or tribe of people, the Kalamas. And apparently that place was like a crossroads, like it's like an area where there's lots of different people traveling through all the time. And so there would be all kinds of different teachers and renunciates and practitioners traveling through all the time, and sometimes staying and sharing their teachings. And so the people that lived in this area became really confused because there's so many different views, kind of like now, that there's like all these different views and opinions and what's right and what is true and this is what this teacher says, and this is what this website says. Don't go there. And so it's so much like now, it's so confusing, and there's so many different sources of information. And so the teaching from the Buddha, then they come to him and ask, what's true? How do we know? And he says, I'll just read this paragraph. Of course you are uncertain, Kalamas. Of course you are in doubt. When there are reasons for doubt, uncertainty is born. So in this case, Kalamas. Now here's this list, and there's a lot in this list. Don't go by reports, by legends, by traditions, by scripture. Don't go by logical conjecture even, or inference or analogies. Don't go by agreement through pondering the views, or by probability, or by the thought, this contemplative is our teacher, so don't just take my word for it, or any teacher. Then he says, when you know for yourselves that these qualities are unskillful, and then they go on, or blameworthy, these qualities are criticized by the wise. These qualities, when adopted and carried out, lead to harm and to suffering, then you should abandon them. And then, as is often the case, the whole thing is reversed into when you know for yourself what is skillful, what is free from blame, what is adopted by the wise, and carried out and leads to the ending of suffering. And so the point he's driving home there is when you know for yourself. Now, how do you know for yourself without reports, analogies. Aunt Betty says, by pondering it, by probability, how do we know for ourselves? Practice. We know for ourselves by cultivating calm, direct knowing. Is this onward leading or not? Does this onward leading meaning, does this view move me towards less suffering or more suffering? Does it lead to more compassion or more anger? Does it lead to more wisdom, clarity, calm, joy? These qualities that are part of this path. And so not to take others' words for it, but to really reflect it, and to know the way we know with shamatha vipassana, this practice of calm insight. This is a way to freeing my heart and mind. So that's one piece, is to look out, what sources am I referring to, and what is the way to live skillfully without attachment? What is onward leading? Let me just see if, okay, so then this is another important little excerpt from a teaching about, that I think may be relevant to what's currently happening in our world. It's in the Majjhima Nikaya, or what's called middle length discourses. It's Sutta number 63. It's called the Chula Malunkhya Voda Sutta, meaning the shorter instructions to Malunkhya. So Malunkhya is someone that the Buddha is giving teachings to. And all right. I'm just going to share part of this one because it's a little bit longer. And so this person has come to ask for advice, and comes to the Buddha with all kinds of questions. And these questions are kind of the big questions, but I think this teaching applies to other questions that may seem more mundane, that may seem more relevant right now. So he's asking questions like, are the cosmos eternal or not eternal? Are they finite or infinite? Does the soul exist? Is the soul one thing and the body another? After death, all these kind of big philosophical questions. And yeah, it's quite a list I won't go into. And the Buddha gives this teaching after quite a lengthy exposition here on these questions, and he says this. It's just as if a person were wounded with an arrow thickly smeared with poison. That that right there is very evocative. His friends or their friends and companions, their kinspeople and relatives would provide them with a surgeon. And then it's as if that person would then say, I'm not going to have this arrow removed until I know whether the man who wounded me was a noble warrior, a Brahmin, a merchant, or a worker. He would go on to say, I will not have this arrow removed until I know the given name and the clan name of the person who wounded me. I'm not going to have this arrow removed until I know whether he was tall, medium, or short, until I know whether he was dark, ruddy brown, or golden colored, until I know his home, village, town, or city. It goes on until I know whether the bow with which I was wounded was a long bow or a crossbow. You can see this person is in the process of dying, and they go on until I know whether the bow, longbow or crossbow, until I know whether the bowstring with which I was wounded was fiber, bamboo thread, sinew, hemp, or bark, until I know whether the shaft with which I was wounded was wild or cultivated, the shaft of the arrow. I'm not going to have this arrow removed until I know whether the feathers of the shaft with which I was wounded were those of a vulture, a stork, a hawk, a peacock, or another bird. You get the picture here. And it still goes on, whether it was bound with the sinew of an ox, water buffalo, langur, or a monkey. Whether it was a common arrow, curved, barbed, etc. And then it concludes with this person would die and those things would still remain unknown to them. So he's saying to this person that's asking these really big, important questions, you're asking the wrong questions. These are the wrong questions. And it comes down to the right question is, what is the way to the ending of suffering? What is the way, like the arrow thick with poison is obviously the image for suffering. And this practice in our path is about the ending of suffering, the removing of the arrow, not all these questions, which are not going to lead to this release from suffering. Yeah, so it's about understanding that there is suffering, in this case, this image of the arrow, and there's a cause for suffering, understanding that the cause for suffering is clinging. And in this case, we're talking about the clinging attachment to views and how that causes, in what way does that cause suffering? And so then there's the path, the way to the ending of suffering. We know if something has a cause, it can have an ending. And our whole practice and path, our study, our community, our intentions are around ending suffering. Okay. There's so much here to talk about, but we're going to stop and practice. And so to look at our views, take this up as a practice. What views am I attached to, mundane or otherwise? And what would help me be less attached to my views? It's the, and here's a clue, maybe listening. Just saying. you know, we get so argumentative and trying to change each other's point of view. And just like the guy with the arrow, it's like so pointless. It's not working. And what happens, there was a teacher, what's his name? Oh dear, I can't think of his name right now. Apologies. Who was talking about, you know, like in the whatever 60s or 70s or something, and being an anti-nuclear activist and going to a place where they were building stuff for nuclear reactors, or there was some nuclear site. Oh, this isn't a very good story. I'm not saying this very clearly. The point was this group of them went there and stayed there and actually did a retreat there on site, Los Alamos. I think that's what it was, right? In the States, where they build nuclear missiles or something. They actually went there and had the retreat on site. And they said, yeah, you can do that, but you can't use our washrooms and we're not giving you any shelter. So they rented a camper and used that as their washroom and a place for a bit of shade. And they stayed there and had this retreat. And they spent this time in community, communicating with the workers there, the people that were working at the this facility. And some people were like really debating with them and like argumentative, and it's like, what's this arrow made of? What kind of feathers was it? And then there was another group that were, their main focus, their main intention was listening deeply, really hearing what's going on underneath the words. What is the fear here? What is the is there a place the hearts can connect? Is there any shared vision of compassion? Is there, yeah, how, you know, it's a deeper, bigger question than I can answer, certainly. But it just seems that there's something here. If not able to listen in this way, then at least stop arguing. How about that? And then we have this teaching that continues. This one is coming from that first sutta. Let me go there. In the Kalama Sutta. That was the one where that I first spoke of here, where how do we know what's skillful, wholesome, wise, onward leading? By really paying attention to what's happening, our direct experience, rather than taking other people's word for it. And then it goes into this beautiful practice, which we're going to do now. And so I'll be using a lot of the words that are directly here in this teaching to guide us in this practice of cultivating the heart of goodwill, the heart of compassion in all directions for all beings. It's a bit different than how we've done metta or compassion practice before, where we use phrases to particular groups of people. This is more of what's called a radiant metta practice. That includes all the Brahma Viharas or heart abode practices of wishing for goodwill, wishing for freedom from suffering, the heart imbued with appreciation for others, and the heart imbued with equanimity. So that's our practice tonight. And to help us with our attachment to views. Okay, so to let this being one of these heart quality practices, it's often begun with a invitation to really get comfortable with your, so that you're not in a posture of striving or pain, which of course gets in the way sometimes with us really being able to connect to these heart wishes. So feel free to dim your lights or to lay down, to get some other cushions or supports as you need. I'm going to have a sip of water. Hmm. All right. So finding a posture that feels steady, whether that's standing, reclining, or sitting. You want some sense of width and stability. And then see what posture for your eyes is helpful for your practice tonight. Does it feel like you can connect with heart intentions? Is it helpful for you to close your eyes or to have your eyes slightly open? Or you may need to look at something, or not need to, might be helpful for you to look at something beautiful, heart touching, calming that's in your space. And then we're just taking time here to just land it with ourselves in our posture in this present moment. So you might begin by relaxing any tension that's in the face. Lengthening, softening, releasing any tension or muscles in the neck, throat, top of shoulders. Relaxing the hands. And as we begin to soften and drop any extra tension that isn't helpful or needed right now, we might feel a little more connected with the ground, sensations of the ground, the touch of the chair or support that you're on. And then just taking some time to check into the areas of the center of the belly and center of the chest or heart center. Noticing if there's any tension here that we could invite some softness, some space, some width, some kind of tension with. And then we'll just take some time here to connect with our own deepest intentions and wishes for peace, for ease, for freedom, for compassion. As much as is available to you in this moment to feel into your own kind intentions and wishes for yourself. And as was said in this teaching from the Buddha, to really know what qualities are skillful, are blameless, are praised by the wise. What qualities, when we really act on them, live from them, lead to our happiness. As much as possible right now, with our hearts and minds free of greed, free of wanting, free of ill will. Free of delusion. And it's as if there's a little energetic curtain in front of you that you just invite that curtain to move aside. You draw that curtain aside with your intention and allow these wishes, your awareness imbued with goodwill, to flow forward. And that might be felt to just some degree of a sense of into the space in front of you. And it really depends on many conditions. Some might be able to connect to a feeling of it flowing forward outside of your home, in the direction in front of you, through your community, and see how as it goes forward, it gets wider. And this wish, this awareness suffused with goodwill, is like the sun shining on all the beings in that direction without discrimination. And then you could imagine this curtain continuing to be pulled back now, and the area to the left of your body feels released of some boundaries and borders. And this goodwill continues to flow forward and also suffusing the area to the left of you. It's okay if you feel like you're just imagining it or thinking about it. That's part of how it arises. Just trust the intention. You're not trying to fix anyone or heal anyone or change anyone, just offering this heart awareness. When you feel ready, allow that curtain to continue to be drawn back around you to the back of the body. We pervade in this direction, your first, second, and third direction. And then continuing to draw that curtain all the way around until it drops away to the right. And we keep pervading above, below, and all around, everywhere, and in every respect, all encompassing. Your heart-mind awareness imbued with goodwill, abundant, expansive, immeasurable, without discrimination, free from hostility and free from ill will. And for these next few moments of silence, we'll just rest with this when you notice the awareness contracts again back into thoughts and plans and me and mine. Just draw back that curtain, let it drop away. All encompassing, infinite, boundless, immeasurable. And then to whatever degree is available in this moment, and that awareness in all directions might just extend to the room that you're in, or the where you're abiding, perhaps at home or in the neighborhood, or it could just feel this open, expansive connection in all directions without a boundary. So whatever is available is okay. And now we allow this heart-mind awareness in all these directions, 4 directions and then above and below, to be imbued with compassion. Compassion is the loving heart responding to suffering. When we see others are suffering, awareness imbued with compassion, abundant, expansive, immeasurable, free from hostility, free from ill will. Perhaps as you rest with this, you can also feel yourself receiving these wishes from others, including ourselves. And then we continue pervading in this first direction, as well as the second direction, third and the fourth, above and below. Awareness imbued with appreciation. Pervading everywhere and every respect. Free from ill will. Appreciation. And lastly, in all directions. We keep pervading all around, everywhere, in every respect. Awareness imbued with equanimity, steadiness, freedom from attachment, free from ill will, free from hostility, equanimity, May all beings in all directions, without exception, be touched with the heart of goodwill, compassion, appreciation, and equanimity. And may I know and receive these intentions and wishes in my being. And for those that have joined us on this on YouTube with the recording, I'll list the suttas that I referenced down below, or put links to them that you could also read them online if you don't have them in book form, which many don't. And there's also a link there to offer support for the continuation of these teachings if you're able. And I think that in our next either one or two times together here, going to explore some other teachings that are related to this about how to test a belief in practice. So, this teaching was, how do we knowing within ourselves, how do we test that? How do we know that? And then the other part that's pointed to here is how to judge whether another person is wise. That'll be good. I'm looking forward to that one, because it's as I pointed to earlier, is like to it's not just to listen to your own opinion about things, but it's this different kind of knowing, and it's also let me see if I can find the words. Oh yeah, let me go to the skillful version of it. To know for yourselves, these qualities are skillful, these qualities are blameless, these qualities are praised by the wise. So how do we know who's wise? And these qualities, when adopted and carried out, lead to welfare and to happiness. Then you should enter and remain in them. So there's two aspects there. How do we know, and how do we know who's wise? Yeah, looking forward to checking that out myself. So you got to come back to figure out who's wise. And yeah, thanks for checking out that practice and practicing with these radiant heart abodes. And for those that are here on the Zoom call, you're welcome to stay if you like, or not. That's okay. Let's see.